pounds of steel and coal harnessed together furnish the power that drives Rio Grande Scenic Limited westbound over towering Continental Divide, through rugged Tennessee Pass, 10,240 feet of elevation in a land of Herculean proportions, down a granite vertebra of the backbone of the North American continent, into color-splashed canyons mottled with spruce and pine, evergreen sponges that retard the rush of water from eternal snows. Mile after mile, our route parallels the Colorado River, a swift-flowing palette that catches the myriad colors of nature's endless parade of beauty, a surging guide that leads us across Colorado's boundary at dusk into Utah. Now a mysterious land of empurpled distances, shadow-tinted by a retreating sun. Rhythmic wheels symphonize a lullaby of flanges and rails, desert night and sky spangles, past small way stations, on to a dawn destination, Arches National Monument, which is reached from a tiny desert outpost, Thompson, Utah. Flame scarlet rays herald the approach of a desert morning, and we are on our way by horseback to the Arches, a complex group of sandstone portals ranging in size from peepholes to great openings through which armies could march. Everywhere they exhibit a wizardry of sculpture, great bowls of sandstone, perfectly engineered. Spectacular rock visions dominating this vast desert domain. The giant openings are natural windows through which we view an enchanted land. Red rocks and sagebrush reaching out to the mighty snow-capped La Salle Mountains. Like a fantastic scene from the Arabian Nights, we succumb to the spell of a desert witchery and are enthralled by an unbelievable processional, a parade of elephants, mighty stone pachyderms, as if waiting the appearance of a bejeweled potentate. This is a world of magic windows, grotesque grandeur created by wind and erosion. The desert possesses an impelling force. Miles of pale yellow sand lift themselves to meet a sky band of faraway cliffs. An indescribable vastness softened now by the waning purple and molten silver shadows of a departing day. Aboard the Scenic Limited again, through ebony darkness, into Utah's great Carbon County coal region. Bound for Castle Gate, imposing entrance to the Wasatch Plateau. Gray sandstone projections atop the canyon ridges guard the bituminous wealth of this section. Enough coal to supply the entire United States for 250 years. It is estimated almost 196 billion tons of coal remain to be mined, and the fact that 45% reaches out-of-state markets makes for an endless parade of coal-laden gondolas up and down mountain grades. The coal resources of Utah are enormous, with 1/5 of the state underlaid with this valuable combustible mineral. Utah coal, black magic that fires the furnaces of progress. Lunch, a pleasant interlude, tasty dishes spiced with fleeting scenes. Up to Soldier Summit, over 7,000 feet high, the crest of the Wasatch Plateau. Here the railroad reaches its highest Utah elevation, and what was once the scene of Indian warfare is now a busy mountain crossroad. Passengers and commerce moving east and west over a modern double-track system, a quartet of steel arteries reaching into infinity. We're over the hump and it's down to Provo, Utah's third largest city. A scene of great agricultural activity, Provo testifies to the reclamation of the desert. A bronze plaque commemorates the historic trek of Father Escalante, priest and pathfinder, who entered this region in 1776. Failing in his effort to find a shorter route between the missions at Santa Fe and Monterey, Escalante was nonetheless overawed by the commanding picture of Mount Timpanogos, which the Indians called the Sleeping Princess. Over 12,000 feet high, it is a perpetual spillway for the crystal cold liquid snow rushing to assimilate itself with Utah Lake, the largest body of fresh water in the state and the fountainhead of Utah's vast and important enterprise, irrigation. To the Mormon settlers, this lake was the Sea of Galilee in their new Holy Land, supplying water for Utah's River Jordan. To provide a steady flow, powerful pumps are utilized so that man is enabled to cooperate with nature in perpetuating the transformation of once barren Salt Lake Valley. And like the biblical River Jordan, this stream too has its Dead Sea, emptying into the Great Salt Lake. Modern irrigation traces its beginning to that July day in 1847 when advance scouts of Brigham Young's party plowed ground and began what is generally accepted as the first irrigation project by Anglo-Saxons on this continent. Pioneer foresight and frontier ingenuity have wrought a miracle. Irrigation ditches fed by rivers and streams traverse once waterless valleys. A parched land drinks its fill of gurgling waters. Responding with an amazing fertility, Utah soil produces, with the possible exception of citrus fruits, any farm product grown elsewhere in North America. One of the oldest and most important agricultural pursuits is the cultivation of sugar beets, giving Utah high rank as a producer of beet sugar. Liquid sunlight gurgles and sings with the cool seduction of flowing water, bestowing a new sense of beauty. Flowery aisles of cherry blossoms are dreamy avenues of fragrance, spreading out in broad, open meadows of color. Ethereal petals of pink, delicately tinted by the radiance of a morning sun, create a fairyland pastoral scene with an air of biblical peace and serenity. These are the children of earth and water, decking themselves in petal splendor, saluting the birth of a desert empire. Copperton, Utah, the model city that Copper built with its copper-shingled homes, is the approach to Bingham, famous mining town, with its 7-mile-long canyon street, a narrow lane sprouting frame dwellings. Located 25 miles southwest from modern Salt Lake City, Bingham still utilizes a 1-horsepower mail delivery system, with the result that mail is picked up and delivered in real old Western style. Our next objective is the mine headquarters of the Utah Copper Company, for many years the scene of feverish activity. Small cable-hauled trams provide an inclined ascent for several hundred feet, permitting us unrestricted vision of this little town. So vast are the mining operations here, it is necessary to board yet another vehicle, this time the caboose of a supply train, to see the world's largest open-cut copper mine. What a spectacle! This man-made wonder, an immense amphitheater-like quarry, terraced with 23 benches or working levels, each 70 feet high. The mine covers an operating area of 475 acres. It is 1,600 feet from the crest to the floor of the pit, which is encircled with miles of railroad track, over which electric engines haul ore cars of 80 and 100-ton capacity. First prospected in 1862 by United States soldiers, it remained dormant until the period of the Spanish-American War, when Colonel Daniel C. Jackling, realizing its great possibilities, made his preliminary efforts to create this awe-inspiring project. Like the fabled ventures of Egyptian pharaohs, this great enterprise, too, depends upon manpower, and more than 4,000 are employed when operating at peak capacity to handle a single day's output of 70,000 tons of low-grade copper ore. Enough mineral in one day to fill 824 cars, equivalent to a train almost 5 miles long, and that's mining. Terrace and trestle cross and recross this massive mineral basin. Until 1938, more than 266 million cubic yards of material was removed from this enormous mine, a staggering feat exceeding the total excavations for the Panama Canal by more than 20 million cubic yards. A blasting preliminary is the loading and shooting of spring holes, a prologue to the stupendous multiple explosions. Mechanical molds, electric churn drills burrow into the earth, a chain of holes each approximately 23 feet in depth. Fearless powder monkeys nonchalantly pack these small but mighty capsules of ammonium nitrate powder into the apertures, enough explosive to literally move the earth. And here it goes! What an explosion! Thunder over Utah! 125,000 tons of mineral dust, a veritable smoky curtain of copper. This man-made earthquake is the signal that sends empty ore cars on their way to load up, and it becomes necessary to lay whole sections of new track in order to reach the debris. 29 electric shovels stab the earth, giant steel dippers scooping 6 to 7 tons of rock at a time, completely filling an ore car in the record time of 5 minutes. Yes, they move mountains here in Utah. And the parade of rock-laden cars starts for the Magna Mill. Part of the blasted material is capping or waste, but this too is utilized, being dumped so that water may flow through it, and in this manner capture certain chemical qualities with the power to transform tin can shavings into almost pure copper precipitate. In reality, these shavings are scrap iron, gathered in bales like hay. Pitched into a lengthy trough. Becoming saturated with the copper-charged water, the waste iron is magically converted into copper. troughs, technically called launders, deposit the solution in huge settling tanks, extending the length of the plant. At this stage, the precipitate is 89% copper and is ready to be transported to the smelter for the fiery baptism which will convert it into solid metal. We leave the precipitate and follow the ore to Magna Mill, where we witness an amazing operation. A carload of rock turned upside down like a toy in a powerful rotary dumper. Sharing our fascination is Colonel Daniel C. Jackman, active head of this stupendous copper enterprise. Tons of rock are catapulted into the crusher, looking for all the world like a huge coffee grinder, creating an ear-splitting roar. Conveyor belts carry the grist from crusher to crusher, each chewing the ore a little finer until mechanical classifiers divert any remaining coarse bits to the battery of ball mills. Pulverized to a fine consistency, the ore is mixed with reagents, becomes a pulp-like mixture, and is delivered to the flotation machines where the copper mineral is floated away from the worthless gangue or rock and recovered as copper concentrate and then made ready for delivery to the smelter. Here, gold, strangely enough, is a byproduct of copper, being caught in valuable quantities in these launders through which the mill tailings flow. Efficient mining and smelting of low-grade ore makes for continuous activity at the massive Garfield smelter, where more copper matte is produced than at any other place in the world. From one steel volcano to another, the fiery copper lava is drawn, rejecting all waste material or slag. The slag is skimmed off. It is poured into special metal dump cars. Then it is rushed to the slag pile, where it cascades down the side of an ever-increasing mountain of waste. Purged and purified, the stream of molten copper is molded into 450-pound blocks, cooling streams of water playing on the hissing, steaming oblongs. And thus, copper is born to serve mankind. Slender strands, metal arteries loaded with the lifeblood of industry, electric power. Hemispheres are linked. A world speaks. That's copper. Established in pioneer days as a bathing resort, Black Rock at the edge of the Great Salt Lake is still pleasure mecca for thousands who come to bathe and thrill in the waters of this inland sea. And believe it or not, you float like a cork. It is impossible to sink due to the high salt content of this briny ocean. Its waters are 7 times heavier than the Atlantic or Pacific and contain over 22% salt. So salty that 3 quarts of its water will boil down to 1 quart of fine, pure salt. One need not know how to swim to experience the buoyant sensation of tossing about in the waters of this weird lake, which has no outlet. Its only animal life is a minute shrimp that scuttles over the crystal precipitates at the bottom. Swimmers are refreshed and invigorated, even though their bodies are caked with a thin crust of fine salt. Surpassingly beautiful Salt Air Pavilion with its Moorish architecture lures thousands of visitors offering pleasure and recreational thrills. Dancing on the largest open-air floor in the world and easy access to the Great Salt Lake by way of the Putt-Putt Railway, which works overtime carrying sightseers and salt-laden swimmers. Here, too, the waters of the Great Salt Lake provide seasoning enough for all the hard-boiled eggs in existence. Giant pumping plants syringe the brine through flumes, forcing the water into a vast solar evaporating pond. So immense are the salt beds that the human figure walking across them appears pygmish by comparison. Salt is an industry in Utah, and major companies work the year round, supplying the demands of the world for this table necessity. Utah highways are pleasure ways, and this time lead us to Ogden, second largest city in the state. New Pineview Dam and Reservoir in Ogden Canyon does its part in creating expansive farms and orchards. And even the canyon itself is spanned by water coursing through a catenary pipeline. Nourishment that works hand in hand with sun and Utah mountain air to produce barley and wheat for the mills of the Beehive State. Here, plow and harrow have cut the earth. As far as the eye can see, waving stems of golden grain give promise of an abundant harvest. Utah's ranges supply ample pasturage for thousands of Hereford and other cattle that graze and fatten on succulent grass. White-faced beeves keep alive and nurture the spirit of the Old West. Glowing embers, white heat, branding irons. Cowhands still ride the Utah Trail. Great artists have been at a loss to properly catch on canvas the simple beauty of sheep serenely grazing. Woolly wanderers, almost 1 million of them, slowly moving from place to place on intimate terms with the natural beauty that surrounds them. Sheep raising is a major Utah industry, yielding more than $20 million annually. Leaving Ogden, western terminus of the Rio Grande Railroad, we are thrilled again with the prospect of going places. This time to the throne of a desert empire, Salt Lake City. More than 90 years ago, covered wagons freighted with courageous men and women forced balky oxen over tortuous desert routes. What a contrast. Steel-covered wagons powered with the might of thousands of steam oxen thunder over flashing rails. Carefree, speedy transportation, safeguarded all the way by cyclopean green and red eyes. Ever-alert signal towers, the mechanical mounted police of the steel highways. On we roll, past fertile acres shaded by towering peaks of the Wasatch Range. On to Salt Lake City, miracle metropolis that rose from dead desert sands. Objective is just a matter of moments. Air brakes gently slow our train, while alert porters make ready to empty passenger-crowded vestibules into the busy Rio Grande station. Salt Lake City, commercially and culturally the lodestone of the West, a tribute to the foresight and wisdom of its founder, Brigham Young. Majestically situated on a rolling slope, Utah's magnificent granite capital is a fitting symbol of this great commonwealth. Famous Eagle Gate makes a striking arch to the portal which led to Brigham Young's private estate, while close by stands a bronze of him, surmounting the Pioneer Monument, a massive granite pedestal. Sculptured by Dolan, the statue represents Brigham Young in a characteristic pose and is an excellent likeness of him in his prime. Everything here bears the impress of this brilliant man. And our trip would not be complete without visiting the Emigration Canyon Monument, marking the spot where travel-stained wagons halted on July 24th, 1847, to permit their leader, Brigham Young, to rise from his sickbed in a wagon box and exclaim, "Is the place." Presently, the Mormon Tabernacle, seating 8,000 people, is so acoustically perfect that a pin dropped may be heard the length of the auditorium. The great temple is a remarkable example of pioneer architecture. 4 days after his arrival in a desert wilderness, Brigham Young, while walking, suddenly stopped and, striking his cane into the parched soil, said, "Here we will build the temple of our God." The golden-covered statue of the angel Moroni proclaims the restoration of the gospel. Beautiful gardens surround the temple, and most prominent is this cactus reproduction of a beehive, emblem of Utah and haven of the deseret or honeybee, symbolic of industry and thrift. Each day at noon, except Sunday, visitors are treated to inspiring organ recitals in the tabernacle. Here, Dr. Frank Asper, renowned artist, interprets the works of the great masters on this historical organ, which contains 7,000 pipes. One could go on almost forever wandering through these friendly grounds, replete with symbols of Mormon history. No story ever told is so utterly amazing and dramatic as that miracle of 1848, which prompted this memorial to seagulls, the only monument ever erected to bird life in America. Picture, if you can, pioneers rejoicing over the prospect of harvesting their first crop. Without warning, hordes of crickets start devouring every green thing. Pioneers fight to save the precious grain. Discouraged, they offer prayer. Suddenly, the heavens are filled with flocks of seagulls who devour the crickets, and so a column is erected in remembrance of the mercy of God to the Mormon pioneers. Centrally located are bronze statues of Joseph Smith, the prophet, and his brother Hiram. It is related that, as a boy, Joseph Smith saw a vision, and as a result, founded the Mormon religion in Fayette, New York, in April 1830. Here's Heber J. Grant, 7th President of the Church of Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints.
I am delighted always to welcome visitors to Salt Lake City. I like to recall it was stated of old that the house of the Lord should be erected in the tops of the mountains, and people of many nations gathered there, and that the desert would be made to blossom as the rose. When Brigham Young led our Mormon people across the plains to the slopes of the Wasatch Range, he looked upon the desert surrounding the great Salt Lake and cried out, "This is the place." The Lord's house has been built here. A desert has been redeemed. People of many nations have gathered here. I was born and raised in this valley and was a passenger on the first Rio Grande train into Salt Lake City more than half a century ago. The passing years have strengthened the thought I had then that these fertile valleys of the Rockies are a tribute to the industry, sacrifice, thrift, and courage of the pioneer men and women who founded this land of bountiful beauty. For the strength of the hills, we bless thee, our God, our Father's God.
To fully appreciate Salt Lake City and understand its unique historical background requires far more time than the few brief hours we have enjoyed. Hours amongst people friendly and hospitable. But we face the inflexible reality of railroad schedules, and it's back on board. This time, the panoramic, eastbound over the Moffat Tunnel scenic shortcut. Dreams do come true. Brigham Young's prophecy is fulfilled. Utah is the Desert Empire.
A great railroad at work is a title full of meaning. The mightiest machines produced by human ingenuity are indeed useless unless guided and serviced by the intelligence and skill of man. We are, of course, very proud of our mechanical equipment, but we are prouder still of the men who keep it running. The New Haven Railroad is more than just ties, rails, and rolling stock. It is primarily people. People whose skill, devotion, courage, and strict adherence to the finest railroad practices have made possible its record of safety, efficiency, and progress.
Right, Mr. Palmer. And now let's have motion pictures take us behind the scenes of a great railroad at work. We'll see two general phases: railroad operation and railroad maintenance. Trains are of two kinds, passenger and freight. Let's begin with the passenger. The locomotive backing into the yards to pick up the cars of the Yankee Clipper. The cars, meanwhile, have been made ready for the passengers, and having them clean and sanitary is Rule A in the art of railroading. Repair shops. Here, passenger coaches, dining cars, and grill cars are brought to be repaired or rebuilt. They're put through the latest processes of cleaning and sanitation. There's an imposing background of work behind the picture of a smart, modern car in a passenger train. Sealing of car windows. And here we find a device of technical science to enable you to see better as you gaze at the scenery. Each streamlined window consists of two panes of glass held apart by rubber spacers. These rubber spacers seal the inner surfaces of the glass against the outside air. Between the panes, dry nitrogen is forced to keep them from being fogged by condensing moisture. Into the yards backs the locomotive to pick up the cars. Meanwhile, at the commissary, supplies of food and drink for the dining car are being allotted and checked.
10 baked beans? Check. 4 tomatoes? Check. 6 porridges? Check. 6 figs? Check. 1 Rhine wine? Check. 2 palm wines? Check. 12 Manhattans? Check. 12 martinis? Check.
Right. North.
Have some chicken fricassee tonight.
Yeah, that's very nice.
The amount of groceries they can stow into the small pantry space that car dimensions permit would make a housewife think that it's all magic. But then, as the ponderous locomotive backs gently and is coupled to the cars, we may reflect that there is a lot of magic in a railroad. The clipper pulls out of the yards on its way to the station. Everything timed to the second. On this railroad, hundreds of passenger trains are made up every day, in addition to hundreds of freight trains. They operate through southern New England day and night with a magic of timing. Geometries of tracks in the yards, and the number of switches there calls for deft and intricate manipulation. Into the station. The train can be controlled, air braked, by the rear trainman as well as by the engineer in front, a large factor of safety. South Station in Boston. The old familiar scene, and never without a thrill. Passengers going to a train.
This is our little girl. She's going all the way to New York.
You take good care of her.
Certainly will, ma'am. Step right in.
Bye, Mommy. Bye, darling.
Hey, wait a minute!
Woman in Boston buying a bicycle for her nephew in New York, and he'll get it the next day. This takes us to the subject of freight trains. Shipments of freight are in two classes, carloads and less than carload lots. Delivered to the freight depot and recorded with a weighbill, the boy's bicycle is stowed safely and securely for the trip. There's an art in stowing all sorts of freight securely in a car, and also in switching the cars through the yard. The powerful diesel switcher is the last word in this type of modern mechanism, one of the busiest of workers in the realm of railroading, practically a 24-hour-a-day worker. A new coordination of rail and highway transportation is seen as they load a trailer onto a flat car. The trailer has picked up packages from all over Boston to be distributed in New York. Ordinarily, the tractor pulling the trailer would have made the trip to New York by highway. But now the trailer is securely fastened on the flat car and then carried to the metropolis. This avoids a truck trip to New York, a large saving of gasoline and of rubber tires. Mighty important in these days of wartime shortages with rubber tires rationed. steam locomotive is coupled to the cars, and the theme is Industrial Products of New England on Their Way. They represent the work and skill of New England factories. Transporting them is an equal task of work and skill. The mighty system of operations embodied in the speeding freight train. And the rhythm of the rails seems to sing, New England at work, New England on the move. A signal tower, which trains to and from New York will pass. One of many sentinels of safety. Vigilant alertness 24 hours a day. When a train passes, the signalman flashes the report to division headquarters.
Groton West 177 by at 2:15, engine 1404 with 13 cars. Line up on track 1 for the Clipper.
Freight angle intervenes. For railroads, two categories, passenger and freight, are another form of life's two divisions, people and things. South America is the destination of this large and intricate machine. Carefully crated, it will go by ship, but first it must be taken by rail down New England to the harbor. An export angle of freight service. Industrial New England is of historic importance in the foreign trade of this nation. Passenger service takes plenty of account of passengers' appetites. The grill car is for the less formal meal than the diner provides.
Thank you.
Items 1, 2, 3, and 4 correspond to those up on the board.
Do you suppose I could have that roast beef rare?
Certainly.
All right, then I'd like rare roast beef with mashed potatoes and peas.
Would you like something to drink?
Yes, tea with lemon.
Tea with lemon, thank you.
The dining car is a place of leisurely luxury, regaling yourself while the passing scenery provides entertainment.
One broiled Boston squat, and the squat is very nice today. One French fried potato, one lettuce and tomato salad, one coffee, one apple pie.
How's your Boston squat, French fried potatoes? Coming out. Pick up on the Boston squat.
Thank you, Chef. Pepper soup, please.
This classification yard shows us an ingenious angle of freight transportation. It has a sort of hill, which they call the hump. This hill is a key factor in what we'll see, the classification of freight cars. They are oiled while on the move, on their way up the hump. They go on to the top of the slope. The purpose of all this is to classify incoming trains so they can be reassembled as other trains, each to go to a different destination. The yard master directs the switching. The car is to be switched to various tracks.
And on your second sheet, 22 to 24, 43 to 33, 48 to 13.
At the top of the hump, cars are uncoupled, and they roll down by gravity. Some cars would get up too much speed if it weren't for the retarder, a device for checking their speed.
MV-26, car.
In the retarding tower, the speed is governed, electrically controlled. Switches direct the cars to the right tracks, where they join other cars to make new trains for other destinations. We see the crate of machinery for South America going over the hump. The train in which this car arrived consists of cars bound for different destinations. In the classification yard, it will join a train going to the harbor. Less than carload lots are reclassified as this LCL transfer. Just as whole trains must be rearranged with reference to the destinations of the cars, so must individual consignments of merchandise in a car be rearranged with reference to their destinations. And this is done here. The car is unloaded, and the merchandise is reassembled in other cars. These cars are then attached to trains bound for many, many places. The engine house, where running repairs are made. We see another phase of railroading, maintenance of equipment. There are light repairs made at many points on the railroad. And there are heavy repairs which are made in a great locomotive shop. Here's a ponderous fantasy of fire and steel, the mighty forge of a modern Vulcan. All locomotives are overhauled periodically. Each one, after going from 120,000 to 400,000 miles, is sent to the shop for a complete overhauling. The slip track is an oil track where overhauled locomotives get final tests. They can be driven many miles at all speeds forward and backward on a track that simulates conditions of speed. A monster locomotive, thoroughly overhauled, is a symbol of that factor so vital in all mechanics, all industry, maintenance. A mechanized army, for example, is as good as its maintenance, and so is a railroad. A locomotive must be serviced, and that occurs at many places along the line. It requires, for example, sand to give the big drive wheels traction when the rails are wet and slippery, and coal to be blown automatically into the firebox. The fireman just operates a lever. The coal pile is a mountain. Countless tons of the black fuel stored against any emergency, anything that might cause a shortage. The coal pile tells us that a railroad is not only a mover of things, it is also a buyer of things. This we see vividly at one of the warehouses, stocked with shovels, brooms, locomotive and car replacement parts, tools for track, shop and building maintenance, signal equipment, and countless other miscellaneous items a railroad needs. Ties go with rails as ham with eggs. As in the case of coal, the stocks of railroad ties are immense, a matter of acres. It takes more than 3,000 ties to make just 1 mile of standard railroad track. Lumber to hold up steel, and oil for fuel, for every sort of lubrication, and for paint. Salvage is a large activity. Everything possible is saved and put away for future use. Railroad economy. Laboratory tests for all vital materials purchased by the railroad. Metals, for example, are subjected to exacting tests. In the chemical laboratories, the magic of modern alchemy is applied to the checking of the materials in the interest of safety, efficiency, and economy. And there's research here to find new things, new combinations, new ways of applying chemical science to railroading. The micrometallograph camera analyzes many materials for railroading with ultra-modern science. Power of steam and steel, taking a treasure store of New England merchandise into the night. The night freight calls our attention to an element of time, the bright time of day, and here's the dark time of night. Railroading is on a 24-hour schedule. Despite the elements, and never mind the weather, be it fair or stormy, hail, sleet or snow, the night freight must go through. The conductor in the caboose keeps a record of all the cars. And the night freight seems to sing a song of work, a song with the refrain, every day, 24 hours a day. The Yankee Clipper, meanwhile, arrives at New Haven, and this brings a transformation from steam to electricity, from coal and fire to volts and amperes. The steam locomotive leaves the train. From Boston and from Springfield to New Haven, the motive power is provided by superheated steam. Then for the remainder of the run, the energy to drive the wheels is provided by dynamos. The electric locomotive is a thing of streamlined efficiency, a monarch of high tension. Electricity has been a comparatively recent story in American railroading. It began in 1895 on the New Haven Railroad, which pioneered in overhead high-tension lines. And now the clipper goes speeding under electrical power. We're in a new world of railroading, a realm where 100 thunderbolts of Jupiter are harnessed to turn the wheels of trains. The sources of electric power are coal and steam. And at this railroad-owned powerhouse, the boilers are 60 feet high. The heat meters register 2,000 degrees, generating steam with a pressure of 300 pounds to the square inch. Powdered coal blown into the furnace and burning in suspension in the air. The turbo generators hum at 1,500 revolutions per minute to produce in a single year over 100 million kilowatts of electricity. The nerve center of the powerhouse, the main control room with its elaborate equipment. Here, watchful eyes check the surge of power through the overhead lines, railroad power. A masterpiece of roadbed construction and maintenance is this 4-track electrified right-of-way. Over it pass between 600 and 700 trains a day. The Yankee Clipper, now electrified, approaching the environs of New York, which means it will soon go underground because the tracks for miles proceed beneath traffic and beneath buildings of the metropolis. We pass into a subterranean world, a signal tower underground. Here more than 600 trains a day are guided in and out over the 107 tracks of Grand Central Terminal.
28 up H. 28 up H. 18 out C. 18 out B. 84 up B. 84 up E. Put him on the outbound tower C. 29 up I. 23 to way D. 23 to the way of D. Track G to track 40 with the clipper. G to 40 with the clipper.
On time, as the train board indicates. Here she comes, the Yankee Clipper. It's coming on the upper level. There are 2 levels of underground tracks for the trains that carry 42 million passengers in and out of Grand Central Terminal every year. There's our boxed machine bound for Rio. From the flat car that brought it to New York, the railroad delivers the consignment on a lighter to its berth aboard the ship. The railroad owns 42 of those ungainly barges with the big derricks. They're strong and sturdy. Some of them can be loaded with 500 tons of freight. What about the tugboat? It's also railroad owned. The railroad owns 13 tugs. They're famous throughout New York Harbor. The railroad owns and operates many other pieces of marine equipment. And so the case of machinery is on its way to be stowed aboard ship, and then south into the tropics, past the equator, to be put into service in the land of the Amazon. New England machines to modernize latitudes of jungle green.
is 234 Western Avenue, New York.
Check. Come on, Mercedes. That's the bicycle bought by Auntie in Boston for her nephew in New York. It's to be delivered to the lucky lad by the railroad through its pickup and delivery system. This is another modern phase of railroading. This is a water gateway for the interchange of freight cars between railroads. New York, the East River. When freight cars from New England are destined for points outside of New England, they may come here. They're to go over the lines of other railroads. And how is the transfer affected? We see a water phase of operation that you might not readily associate with a railroad. A car ferry, and the dock apron can be moved up and down to follow the tide. The car float arrives with cars from the New Jersey side. They're from points south and west and are destined for New England. Raw materials for the industries of New England. And the car float is locked to the dock apron. Steel freight cars roll onto the tracks of the float. Manufactured articles made in large part from raw materials brought previously into New England. On the other side of the river, they will roll similarly onto the tracks of the railroad that is to take them on to complete their journey to some point in this immense country of ours. New England carload lots bound for everywhere. This is a New Haven Rail Gateway up in New York State. It's another point where railroads meet and where freight cars are interchanged. Those are cars loaded with merchandise for New England, raw materials and perishable food, packing house and dairy products from Chicago and Kansas City, oranges and grapefruit from California and Arizona, onions from Texas, meat from Sioux City. It's early morning at a New England city. Freight cars full of fresh food. The beginning of the day, the right time for food distribution. After cars are unloaded, they are pulled into the yards for inspection. Here a string of them are going to the yards to meet the keen eye of the inspector. Cars are carefully inspected at regular intervals. When something wrong is found, the car is tagged. Bad order, familiarly known as B.O. The car then goes to B.O. Brown's yard. Those are his real initials, appropriately. In the yard, light repairs are made. For heavy repairs, freight cars are brought to the back shops here. Wheels are pressed off the axles by the application of enormous pressure. Hundreds of tons. After being repaired to exacting standards of safety, wheels are pressed back onto their axles under pressure. No bolts or screws needed to keep the wheel securely in place. Just that enormous pressure. These pictures have shown us vast magnitudes of material and work. They have revealed to us a complicated industrial system in action, a system of many interlocking parts, operation and maintenance, passenger and freight, carload and less than carload lots, steam and electrification, light repairs and heavy repairs. All these coordinated with a perfection of timing, the many parts working together harmoniously, a giant clockwork of transportation, an American railroad. All this is typical of the industrial genius of America. It is an example of that world-important thing on which this nation and our brother nations must rely in a perilous war of worldwide scope. Our victory depends first of all on the American gift for making giant industrial systems of production and transport operate with an amount of efficiency that no other nation can match. Such is the larger meaning of these scenes of a great American railroad at work. The human factor is the true source of all the mechanical wonder. It is as New Haven President Palmer told us, people whose skill, devotion, courage, and strict adherence to the finest railroad practices have made possible this railroad's record of safety, efficiency, and progress.